I've always been the type to lose myself in gadgets and the endless possibilities of technology ever since I was a kid. I remember the first time I dismantled an old radio, mesmerized by its inner workings, and vowed that one day I'd turn that curiosity into something real. Back then, the world of tech was this vast frontier, and I was ready to explore every bit of it, even if it meant making a few mistakes along the way. After high school, I landed a job at a local printing house. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me the importance of precision, hard work, and perseverance. Every day behind those humming machines, I could see how a blend of technology and creativity could produce something meaningful. The repetitive clatter of the presses soon turned into a rhythm that fueled my dreams of doing something more innovative. I knew I was destined to build something of my own, something that could combine the art of printing with the potential of modern technology. A few years later, that dream began to take shape. I took a leap of faith and founded my own business in Chicago, a decision that scared me as much as it thrilled me. I remember the early days vividly: cramped office spaces, sleepless nights, and the constant hum of my ever-growing ambition. I had invested everything I had into this venture, determined to blend the tactile world of printing with cutting-edge tech solutions. Slowly but surely, those risks paid off. The business started to pull in six-figure profits, and I realized that the passion I'd nurtured since childhood was finally becoming a living, breathing reality. Amid the chaos of launching a company, life had its own plans for me. It was during one of those rare, quiet evenings when I thought about what truly mattered that I met Ashley. She had this calming presence that balanced my restless spirit perfectly. Our connection was instant, and before long, we were building a life together, one that was just as fulfilling as any business deal I'd ever closed. We got married, and together we embarked on a journey that felt as unpredictable and exciting as the early days of my career. Our love blossomed alongside the growth of my business, and soon enough, Ashley and I were blessed with two incredible daughters, Lauren, who's now 26, and Haley, who's 22. Raising them was an adventure all its own. There were nights filled with laughter, days filled with challenges, and countless moments when I marveled at how fast time was flying. Our family became the anchor I'd always needed, a constant reminder that the true measure of success isn't just in bank statements or profit margins, but in the warmth of a loving home. We ended up living in a large house that was as much a symbol of our journey as it was a haven for our family. Every room held memories. Evenings spent laughing over dinner, quiet mornings with coffee and newspapers, and even the occasional argument that, in hindsight, just made us stronger. The house was more than bricks and mortar. It was a testament to the life we'd built together, fueled by dreams, dedication, and a whole lot of heart. Reflecting on it all, I often think about how far I've come from that curious kid tinkering with radios. The journey wasn't easy. There were failures, doubts, and moments when the pressure of responsibility seemed unbearable. Yet, every challenge was a stepping stone to a life I once only dared to imagine. My business in Chicago not only validated my passion for technology and innovation, but also allowed me to provide a comfortable life for my family. Those six-figure profits weren't just numbers. They were the means to secure our future, to invest in dreams, and to create a legacy that my daughters could be proud of. Now, when I sit back and look at everything, from the modest beginnings at a printing house to the sprawling home filled with love and laughter, I can't help but feel a profound gratitude. Life, in all its unpredictable twists, had given me the opportunity to blend my love for technology with the joy of family. Every late night at the office, every moment of uncertainty was worth it when I see the smiles on my family's faces. This isn't just a success story about business. It's a story of passion, perseverance, and the incredible power of love. Lately, something felt off at home. I noticed that Ashley had become increasingly distant, her warmth replaced by a cool reserve that left me constantly questioning what had changed. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when every conversation sparkled with the shared dreams we once had, but now it felt like we were speaking different languages. I try to brush it off as just the stress of everyday life, but deep down, I knew something was amiss. One evening, I was sitting in my study, a cup of coffee cooling by my elbow, when I heard the front door creak open. I glanced up, expecting the familiar sound of keys jingling, only to see Ashley walk in with an air that didn't belong in our modest home. She was wearing an elegant dress that flowed perfectly around her, and her makeup was meticulously done, a stark contrast to her usual casual attire. It was as if she had just stepped off the red carpet for a glamorous dinner rather than returning from our daily routine. I felt a pang of confusion and concern. The way she moved, the subtle yet unmistakable glimmer in her eyes, spoke of secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. Before I could muster a question, the silence between us thickened until she finally spoke, her voice carrying a mixture of defiance and resignation. With a confession that shattered the quiet, she admitted that she'd been involved with Michael, a married man from her office. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, each syllable dismantling the life I thought we had built together. I was numb, struggling to reconcile the loving partner I once knew with the betrayal unfolding before me. Ashley didn't offer an apology, nor did she seem remorseful. Instead, she laid out the reality of her choices with a stark warning. If we ever got a divorce, she wouldn't just walk away quietly. She threatened to claim half of everything: the business, the house, even our daughters. Her tone wasn't pleading. It was more like a final ultimatum, as if she believed that controlling half of our lives would somehow mend the fracture she had created. In that moment, I was forced to confront not only the betrayal, but the foundation of our marriage. The love and trust we'd built over the years were crumbling in front of me, leaving behind a void filled with questions and pain. How could everything change so drastically? And why had I been blind to the signs? The shock of her words reverberated through me, leaving a bitter taste of disbelief and hurt. I was left to wonder if this was the end of our shared story, a narrative that had once promised hope and companionship, but now seemed destined to unravel under the weight of deception. As I sat there, grappling with the enormity of her confession, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss, not just of the relationship we had, but of the future we had envisioned together. The man I had become, with his thriving business and loving family, now found himself at a crossroads, forced to face a betrayal that threatened to upend everything he'd worked so hard to build. Lauren's words echoed in my mind long after she'd spoken them that evening. Over dinner one night, as the tension in the house grew unbearable, she finally mustered the courage to remind me of something we had long since buried under layers of routine and trust: a marriage contract that Ashley and I had signed 30 years ago. I remember the day we signed it like it was yesterday. It wasn't just a legal document. It was our safeguard against betrayal, a contingency plan we both hoped never to use. According to the contract, in the event of infidelity, the unfaithful partner would forfeit all rights to our shared assets, our thriving business, our cherished home, and would be left with a mere 10% of the joint property. It was a clause designed to protect both of us, yet now it felt like a double-edged sword. As Lauren's reminder sank in, a cold clarity took over. I had spent the past few months meticulously gathering evidence, driven by an uneasy certainty that something wasn't right. I had installed discreet security cameras around the house, ensuring every corner was under watch. I had painstakingly taken screenshots from Ashley's phone, capturing incriminating messages and calls that painted a damning picture. Even more painfully, I had recorded conversations, her voice betraying secrets that I never wanted to believe were true. Each piece of evidence was a shard of glass in my hand, a bitter token of betrayal that I had to collect, even as it pained me to do so. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that Ashley's carefully constructed facade was crumbling. I had always prided myself on being thorough, on not letting my emotions cloud my judgment, and now every bit of that training was put to the test. With every new piece of proof, the stark reality of our situation became undeniable. When Ashley finally became aware that her secret advantage, the promise of a clean escape without financial ruin, was obliterated by our binding agreement, she panicked. I could see it in the way she started avoiding my gaze, in the hurried tone of her excuses, in the desperate clamor of her attempts to regain control of the narrative. I remember confronting her one late evening when the evidence was irrefutable. The living room was dimly lit, the soft hum of the security cameras a constant reminder that nothing was hidden anymore. I laid everything out on the coffee table, screenshots, audio files, and even the detailed logs of her suspicious activities. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as Ashley's eyes darted from one piece of damning evidence to another. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The safety net she thought she had was now nothing more than a trap. Her calm, once so assured, shattered into a myriad of frantic whispers and stuttering defenses. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. The contract, which had been a symbol of our mutual respect and commitment, now served as a legal scalpel, cutting away the remnants of a life we once built together. Ashley's desperate attempts to manipulate the situation, to bargain, to plead, only underscored the depth of her deception. It was no longer about saving face or salvaging a crumbling relationship. It was about the irrevocable consequences of her choices. The room was thick with tension as she scrambled to formulate an excuse, a way to reclaim even a fraction of the life we'd shared. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every promise, every whispered lie, was now on record. In her eyes, I saw the dawning realization that the marriage contract was not just an idle piece of paper. It was a shield that protected me and, more importantly, our family from the fallout of her betrayal. Looking back now, I realized that this was the turning point. The marriage contract, something I had always considered a contingency plan for the worst-case scenario, became the instrument of my liberation. It wasn't just about the business, the house, or the money. It was about reclaiming my dignity and securing a future for my daughters, Lauren and Haley, that wasn't tainted by deceit. I had built everything from the ground up with sweat and tears, and I wasn't about to let a single act of betrayal unravel it all. In the silence that followed that fateful confrontation, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The foundation of trust had been irreparably broken, and the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with difficult decisions. Yet, amidst the chaos and heartbreak, there was a sense of clarity. I had the means to protect what was rightfully mine, and more importantly, I had the resolve to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. The marriage contract, now a stark reminder of Ashley's choices, was the control blow that shifted the balance of power, a final, irrevocable declaration that I would not be left with the ruins of a broken promise. The shock of betrayal was still raw when my phone rang that evening. I'd been drowning in a mix of anger and sorrow over Ashley's confession and the fallout of our crumbling marriage, and I wasn't expecting any more life-altering news. Austin and Melanie, my closest friends, were on their way to my house, ready to lend support and offer a shoulder to lean on in my darkest hour. Their presence had always been a beacon of strength, a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in the aftermath of heartbreak. I remember the hope that filled me as I waited, envisioning us huddled together, talking through the mess of emotions and planning a way forward. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as the night was beginning to settle in, a horrifying call shattered any lingering hope. The car carrying Austin and Melanie had been struck by a speeding truck. The vehicle, barreling down the highway with reckless abandon, had collided with their car in a split second of devastation. The news hit me like a sledgehammer. Austin, my brother-in-arms, was gone, taken from us in an instant. And Melanie, the vibrant soul who had always brought laughter and light, was left fighting for her life. I learned that she had suffered critical injuries, the worst being the loss of her left arm. It was as if the universe, already heavy with my own personal betrayals, had decided to pile on the pain. In the days that followed, the sterile white walls of the hospital became both a sanctuary and a prison. I found myself living in a constant state of vigilance, waiting for any sign that Melanie might pull through. My children, Lauren and Haley, clung to me for comfort, their young faces etched with confusion and grief. We sat together in that cold hospital waiting area, The hum of machines our only companion, as I balanced the weight of supporting my daughters while being a pillar for Melanie in her time of need. Every hour was a test of resilience. I spent countless days and sleepless nights at the hospital, running between the intensive care unit and our modest room, where I attempted to weave together the frayed edges of a shattered family. I listened to Melanie's labored breaths and tried to keep my own pain at bay, even as the memory of Austin's sudden loss haunted every corner of my heart. It felt like a relentless, grinding tragedy, one that had no relief in sight. And then there was Ashley. In the midst of this raw, unfiltered grief, she was conspicuously absent. Not once did she step into the sterile corridors of the hospital or reach out with a word of remorse. Her absence was a wound that cut deeper than any physical injury. It was the ultimate confirmation of her betrayal and indifference. My daughters, already reeling from the shock of the accident and the loss of a dear friend in Austin, could not hide their final, resolute hatred for her. They saw her absence as the last nail in the coffin of a once-shared life, a confirmation that she was never truly part of our family when it mattered most. I still replay that night in my mind, the flashing lights of the ambulance, the frantic calls, the cold, unyielding reality of a life interrupted. It wasn't just the loss of a friend or the pain of betrayal. It was the realization that life could pivot from heartbreak to unspeakable tragedy in a heartbeat. The hospital, once a place of healing, had become a stark reminder of the fragility of everything I held dear. In those long, painful days, as I sat by Melanie's bedside and cradled my daughters in the silent void of despair, I vowed that I would protect them at all costs. The scars of that night, of betrayal, loss, and abandonment, would never fully fade, but they would serve as a grim reminder of what could happen when trust is shattered. And even as the final embers of anger smoldered in our hearts, I knew that the only way forward was to rebuild our lives on the fragments of hope and resilience that remained. It happened on a night I never thought would darken my doorstep again. I'd barely begun piecing together the fragments of my shattered life when, out of nowhere, chaos stormed into my house. Ashley and Michael, of all people, broke in unannounced, their eyes wild with desperation as they demanded that I halt the divorce proceedings. Their intrusion wasn't just physical. It was an attack on the very dignity I had fought so hard to reclaim. Michael, who had been nothing more than a pawn in Ashley's elaborate betrayal, now took on a far more aggressive role. His presence in my home was intimidating, and before I knew it, his hand swung out violently, striking me across the face. The shock of that blow reverberated through my entire being. In that split second, all the rage, betrayal, and the urge for justice that had been simmering inside me exploded. I wasn't going to let him or Ashley dictate the terms of my life any longer. Without thinking, I fought back. It wasn't just self-defense. It was a declaration that I wouldn't allow these intruders to terrorize me in my own sanctuary. The struggle was intense, fueled by the adrenaline of countless sleepless nights spent wrestling with my emotions. Somehow, amidst the chaos, I managed to overpower Michael, leaving him battered enough to be rushed to the hospital. The image of him, sprawled on the floor and finally subdued, seared itself into my memory as both a moment of justice and the irrevocable end of any control he thought he could exert over me. Adding to the turmoil was Sarah, one of our trusted friends. Ever the vigilant observer, she had been recording the entire confrontation on her phone. Every threatening word, every moment of violence was captured in stark detail. When she later handed over that recording to the police, it wasn't just evidence. It was a lifeline that would ensure Ashley and Michael would finally face the consequences of their actions. The recording turned the tables in ways I hadn't even dared to hope for. In the aftermath, the repercussions rippled far beyond our doorstep. Ashley's world, once cushioned by her corporate position and the comfort of a shared life, began to crumble. Her management, having received undeniable evidence of her unethical behavior, swiftly terminated her employment. There was no room for her duplicity in a company that valued integrity over manipulation, and her betrayal was too glaring to overlook. Michael's downfall was equally swift and brutal. With the video evidence and the testimonies piling up, lawsuits came crashing down on him like a relentless storm. He was fired from his job, and within a short span of time, he lost all his money. The empire he had tried to build on the ruins of deceit dissolved into nothing, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of his own ruin. That night, as the dust settled and the echo of shouts faded into a haunting silence, I stood amidst the wreckage of my life's recent battles. I wasn't the man who had once been driven by hope and dreams. I was now someone who had been forced to fight for every scrap of dignity left in him. The sting of betrayal had been raw and deep, but the pursuit of justice had given me a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about revenge in the cold, calculated sense, but about reclaiming control over my life. Every punch thrown, every threat defied, was a step away from the person I had been and a move towards the future I deserved. One built on truth, resilience, and the unwavering determination to protect my children and myself. The scars from that night serve as a permanent reminder that no matter how dire the circumstances, I have the strength to fight back and emerge with my integrity intact. In the aftermath of all that pain and chaos, something unexpected began to grow between Melanie and me. We found ourselves drawn together by our shared grief and the long, dark nights that we had spent side by side in that hospital corridor. It wasn't a love born of convenience or a need to fill an empty void. It was a slow, careful healing, a gradual recognition that maybe, just maybe, we could find solace in each other's company. Melanie's resilience was nothing short of inspiring. Despite the physical and emotional scars from that terrible accident, she clung to hope with a tenacity I'd never seen before. As we spent more time together, sharing our fears and memories of those we had lost, our bond deepened. There were moments when I caught a glimpse of a smile on her face, a spark of life that reminded me of the better days we once had. And in those moments, it felt as though we were both daring to believe that there was more to life than endless sorrow. One night, I had a dream that changed everything. I dreamt of Austin, my best friend, whose life was tragically cut short. In the dream, he stood before me, calm and radiant, as if he'd found peace in the great beyond. He gave me a look that was both reassuring and encouraging, and in his own silent way, he blessed my growing feelings for Melanie. It was as if Austin was telling me that it was okay to find love again, that the memory of those we lost wasn't meant to shackle us to misery, but to inspire us to live fully despite our wounds. That dream lit a spark within me. Over time, the healing process continued, and Melanie and I slowly began to let the light in. The days turned into months, and eventually, 3 years after that fateful night that had torn so much from our lives, we decided to start a new chapter together. We exchanged vows in a small, heartfelt ceremony in California, a place where the sun always seemed to promise a fresh start. That day, as I held Melanie's hand and looked into her eyes, I felt a sense of rebirth. It was as if we were both stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into a world of possibility. Melanie's journey was far from over. Inspired by her own hardships, she pursued a career in psychology with an unwavering determination. She became a beacon of hope for others, specializing in helping people who had experienced amputations and other life-altering injuries. Through her practice, she found purpose in guiding others toward healing. We even started conducting seminars together, offering our combined wisdom and compassion to war veterans and victims of car accidents. It was our way of turning personal tragedy into a force for good, a way to give back to a community that, like us, had faced unimaginable loss. Our seminars became more than just events. They were gatherings of resilient souls, each person on their own journey toward recovery. Melanie's insights and gentle demeanor, coupled with my own experiences of betrayal and resurgence, resonated with those who listened. We shared our stories honestly, not to glorify the pain, but to remind everyone that life, however cruel, also has the capacity to heal and to transform. In these moments of shared vulnerability and collective strength, I discovered that love isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to live with it and ultimately growing stronger because of it. Melanie and I built our new life on the foundation of our scars, our triumphs, and the memories of those who had shaped us. The pain of the past would always be a part of us, but it no longer defined us. Instead, it became the raw material from which we forged a future filled with hope, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of healing. Looking back now, I realized that the journey from heartbreak to rebirth was anything but linear. There were days filled with doubt and nights clouded by the shadows of loss. Yet, every step, every stumble along the way led us to this point, a place where love had reclaimed our lives and given us the strength to help others rebuild theirs. As I stand here today, hand in hand with Melanie, I am filled with gratitude for every twist and turn that brought us here. Our story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love, even in the face of overwhelming tragedy. 15 years had passed since the whirlwind of betrayal, loss, and redemption that reshaped my life. Life, as it often does, moved on. My daughter Lauren's wedding had become the kind of celebration where past grievances and old wounds were supposed to be left at the door, replaced by laughter, dancing, and the promise of a bright future. But fate has a peculiar way of stirring up the ghosts of our yesterdays. Just as the ceremony was about to commence, an unexpected call came through from Lauren. She'd been approached by Ashley, my estranged ex, asking if she could be invited to the wedding. The thought of her presence, of her, who had once torn our lives apart, set my heart in a familiar, bitter rhythm. Lauren, caught between the echoes of her past and the hopes for a reconciled future, hesitated. In a moment of paternal instinct mixed with lingering compassion, I convinced her to give her mother one last chance, even though deep down, I knew she didn't deserve it. It was a decision laden with both hope and the weight of inevitable disappointment. The wedding unfolded beautifully, a tapestry of memories and new beginnings. Amidst the swirling colors and heartfelt toasts, I found myself drawn to the quiet refuge of the bar area. There, in the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses, I saw her, Ashley. Time had etched itself on her features. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed with regret, and her posture spoke of a lifetime of hardship. We exchanged a look that carried more meaning than words could capture. Leaning in just enough to be heard over the ambient noise, she said, "I never apologized, did I?" Her tone was a mix of challenge and vulnerability, a final attempt to reclaim a fragment of the past. I looked at her, my heart heavy with memories and finality, and replied simply, "It's too late." Those 4 words hung between us like a verdict, sealing the fate of a relationship that had long since crumbled into dust. In the years that followed, Ashley's life took a stark turn. Gone was the comfortable life of deception and control. In its place was a harsh existence marked by poverty and isolation. She ended up working in a rundown motel, a place as grim and tired as she appeared. Her once proud demeanor was replaced by exhaustion, a daily struggle that left her little more than a ghost of the woman she once was. And then, 8 years later, the inevitable happened. She died alone in a hospital bed, a lonely end to a tumultuous life. At her funeral, not a soul from our tangled past attended except for her own grieving parents, a final, silent testament to the choices she had made. For Melanie and me, however, life had taken a different path. We had built a future that was rich with love and meaning, a future that embraced the lessons of our past without letting it dictate our happiness. Together, we traveled the world, our adventures a patchwork of sunsets and shared laughter. We watched our grandchildren grow, their innocent smiles a constant reminder of hope and renewal. In the quiet evenings and busy family gatherings, we found a contentment that was hard-earned and deeply cherished. As I reflect on that last, fateful meeting with Ashley and the winding down of a once turbulent chapter, I can't help but feel a bittersweet relief. The past, with all its sharp edges and painful memories, was finally laid to rest. Melanie and I continued to live our days in peace, our hearts full of gratitude for the second chance at love and life we'd been given. We proved that even after the darkest storms, the light of redemption could shine through, and that the future, however uncertain, was ours to shape until our final, beautiful days.